Well, to offer us more insight on that story, we're now joined by journalist and political commentator Hafsa Kara-Mustapha, who's joining us from London. And also joining us from San Francisco is investigative journalist Mr. Lee Kaplan. Welcome to the program. Let's start off with our guest in London, Ms. Kara-Mustapha. I want to start off with your reactions on this recent report.
Well, I think the UN report really doesn't say anything that we didn't know in the past. We know for a fact that Israel has soldiers that are very trigger happy, that gun down any person, any civilian, knowing that they can act with total impunity. We remember the young man who was shot dead while he was laying on the floor completely unarmed. As the report also mentions, we have a pregnant mother and her little brother who were actually barked at and couldn't understand Hebrew, and for not understanding Hebrew, they were gunned down. So really, the cases of Israeli brutality and violation of basic human rights are so numerous that this UN report really is reinstating what we know about Israel, what we've known about Israel since its creation. Let's not forget that this is a state that was created by terrorists on the basis of a terrorist organization and on the basis of a Zionist supremacist ideology. So everything that Israel does is in accordance with everything it stands for. And I think this UN report really confirms what everyone knows about Israel.
Well, Ms. Kara-Mustapha, I'll leave the floor to you. Mr. Kaplan has put a big question mark over the report in its entirety.
Well, if Mr. Kaplan felt this way about the report, why did he even bother showing up? I mean, the UN is on the payroll of the Arabs. The EU is apparently supported by the Arabs. Everyone is lying. The Palestinians are lying about Israel. The NGOs are lying about Israel. I'm surprised he didn't throw in the word anti-Semitic, because obviously that's the usual line that Israeli supporters and its apologists usually use by blackmailing everyone. I didn't interrupt you. So can you just keep it quiet here? Now, I'm not in the mood for listening to your ramblings, okay? You've rambled on for 5 good minutes. Let me finish. So this is really ridiculous. We have a UN panel that has actually written. I'm sorry, is your guest actually drunk? Because this behavior is unacceptable.
No, I think you're hilarious. Madam, you're hilarious.
Okay, there's plenty of time for both of you to speak. Let's try to keep this, let's not interrupt each other right now. Please continue, Ms. Mustafa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the report has been made by professionals with the help of NGOs and various groups on the ground. I think it states it's based on the facts that we've seen in the media, across international media, including Western media. We know for a fact that there have been pregnant women gunned down. We know for a fact that the gentleman was in fact shot in the head whilst he was unarmed, and I think the soldier was even tried for that crime, which is a war crime under international law and under all martial laws. So I think there is no question on the validity of the findings of the UN. The only problem at this stage is to ensure that somebody, some nations will act on the findings of this United Nations report.
All right,
well, that was
Mr. Kaplan,
nice.
we were talking about the issue of home demolitions and settlement expansions. You gave us your thoughts on the issue of home demolitions. What about the settlements? Are they illegal, yes or no?
No, they're not. They're not illegal.
Okay.
They're not
Hold it
illegal.
right there. Let's get our guests in from London.
I can tell you why.
Ms. Kara-Mustapha, settlements, are they illegal, yes or no?
They're illegal under international law. Technically, everything that is built by Israelis, which are a community of Estonian, Poles, Russians and everything, who came and illegally settled in Palestinian land, technically everything is illegal. But if we go by international law, yes, settlements are illegal. They've been considered illegal even by the US, which actually funds and supports and is Israel's closest allies. But even various Israeli governments have accepted that settlements are actually illegal, yes.
All right, Mr. Kaplan?
I'd like to ask Ms. Mustafa a question. The knifings that Palestinians are doing of innocent Israeli civilians, the bus bombing that just occurred in Jerusalem a few weeks ago, the running over of soldiers at hitchhiking stations by Palestinians driving cars, and the exhortations from the Palestinian leadership to do these things, plus the payment of awards to those who aren't killed during the acts and end up in Israeli jails, being made by the Palestinian government. Are those things against international law, madam?
Well, let me put it this way. When the French resistance was placing bombs in the SS and the Gestapo headquarters, when they were gunning down Nazis who were occupying France, they were considered heroes. When the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto actually rose up against Nazi occupation and gunned down and killed the Nazi occupiers, those who were subjugating them, they were considered Jewish heroes. Any Palestinian who resists illegal occupation of their land is considered in their right to resist it. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's perfectly legal. When the Americans were attacked by Al-Qaeda in 2001, they retaliated. Anyone who is attacked is perfectly entitled to react. That is international law, that is law,
Okay.
that is humanity. There's nothing to add to that.
Okay, well, a simple yes or no answer would have sufficed, but you've just shown...
Well, that was my answer. You ramble on for 5 minutes. You'll have to listen to my answer.
I didn't speak for 5 minutes, but let me say, just as an example here, what you've done is you try to equate Israel with the Nazis. There is no occupation.
No, I won't,
by Israel.
because the Nazis only lasted less than 10 years. Israel has been going on for 70 years. So the crimes of Israel are far worse and have been going on for far longer. So I'm not making that equation. Absolutely not. We were rid of Israel. We were rid of the Nazis very rapidly. Unfortunately, the fascist state of Israel continues to exist for way longer than should be.
Israel was established by the United Nations, and Israel has the right to be there.
So now you recognize the United Nations. Now you accept that the United Nations has legitimacy. So now you accept the legitimacy of the United Nations.
So now I see. So now you're going to scream over me. You're not going to let me talk.
United Nations.
Israel, there never was a Palestinian.
This is driving it more into a historical conversation. What we're focusing on right now are realities on the ground. Ms. Kara-Mustapha, regarding prison conditions, excessive use of force, and a number of other issues that were brought up in this report. The report accuses Israelis of ignoring all previous agreements reached over the years. Yet again, Israel does not in any way feel compelled to respect international law. My question is, how far can this go on, and how long will this go on?
Well, of course, it won't respect international law as long as it has the support of various major world powers. As you know, the US supports it unconditionally. It vetoes any resolution that goes against Israel. And we know that Israel is really much a PR project. It was founded on the basis of public opinion manipulation. Now, if you take the case of imprisonment, what they do is they simply pick up as many Palestinian youths as they possibly can. And what they do is on the basis of absolutely no particular reason whatsoever, other than to imprison them as a punitive measure.
That's
and of course, later on, use them as prisoner exchange. Use them as prisoner exchange and say, look, we've just released 2,000, 3,000 Palestinians, when in fact those 2,000 or 3,000 Palestinians were simply picked up for being around a street corner sipping tea in a cafe. That's what the Israelis do. That's what they used to do in South Lebanon as well, when Israel illegally occupied South Lebanon. And that is the modus operandi of the terrorist state of Israel.
Tell me something. If your mother was walking down the street and somebody came over and stabbed her with a knife and killed her or wounded her, what would you call excessive, and people there were trying to stop it, what would you call non-excessive actions against it?
British MP, Jewish British MP, Gerald Kaufman, whose family are actually survived, or many died, in fact, in the Holocaust, actually stated that the stabbings were, in fact, orchestrated by Israel. It's very much in line with what Israel does. It creates propaganda. It creates false flags. And it's very odd that very few of these people died. This is a Jewish British MP. This is not me. These are the words of Gerald Kaufman, and you can look them up. And it's very much in line with what Israel has constantly done. Good.
But you didn't answer my question.
You're familiar with something, Mr. Kaplan.
You didn't answer. You didn't answer my question.
Well, my mother isn't occupying anyone.
What is acceptable?
My mother isn't occupying any land illegally, so she's unlikely to be stabbed by people who are resisting occupation.
What is an acceptable form of reaction to try and save people?
My mother is not illegally settled in a country that isn't hers. So she's unlikely to be that victim.
You're ducking the question. You're
No,
ducking
I'm
the
not.
question,
I'm
just
answering
like
you very
talk
clearly.
about. Yes, you are.
My family
just
is
like
not
you
responsible,
talk about,
isn't illegally occupying anyone, so that we're unlikely to be victims of any resistance movement,
First of all,
because we're not illegally occupying the land of anybody.
Okay, Mustafa, first of all, you are not an international lawyer, so stop using the word illegal because you don't know a thing about what you're talking about. And then when we go beyond that...
But at least I'm sober, so at least that's okay. That compensates for my lack of knowledge.
Answer my question. If you say that the Israelis used excessive force, then what force would you say is not excessive? And the fact is, what you're saying is, anything they do to the Israelis are okay. The Israelis should really just lay down and die. They shouldn't do anything to protect themselves or their people.
No, the Israelis shouldn't be occupying Palestine. No, Israelis shouldn't be occupying Palestine. It really is that simple.
They're not occupying Palestine.
Why is it called the occupied territories, Mr. Kaplan? Why is it called the occupied territories? Why do even the Israelis refer to it as the occupied territories? These are not my words. I'm guessing other people use the occupied territories. Why is that occupied used? Yes, what was your question, Badia?
I said you can put in a final thought on what Mr. Kaplan was saying.
Oh, well, there's really no need to actually respond to any of the inanities that were just mentioned. I think this is just drunken ramblings. But I think we have to pick up on the UN report, and I would hope that at this point, and given the endless violations of human rights committed by Israel, that somebody, someone, some nation will act upon these latest findings. I think these would be the most important things to pick up on this.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We're running short of time. A very interesting discussion. Many thanks to my guests. Journalist and political commentator Hafsa Kara-Mustapha joining us from London, investigative journalist Lee Kaplan joining us from San Francisco. Thank you for contributing to the program. I'm going to be signing off now from our studios here in Tehran. Thanks for watching Press TV's The Debate. Bye, everybody.